Mm.
From July 5th to 14th, a historic experiment is taking place around the world. A global meditation to invite peaceful extraterrestrials to show themselves with thousands of light ships across the sky. During this window in time, a planetary alignment will create an opportunity for us to unite and envision a bright future for our planet. This 10-day event will bring humanity together in this time of unprecedented change to rise up and unify. Indigenous cultures and prophecies have told us of star beings standing with us, ready to help and support our transition to a better future. The Harmonic Convergence 2020 will bring together elders, leaders, artists, and experts to guide us through a transformational journey. The last day will culminate in a global meditation to make contact with our universal family. The impact of this collective experience could usher in a new era of unity, love, and reverence for all life. It is time for us to step up and take action to shape the future of this planet. We are human, and we are not alone.
Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm very happy today to be with the executive producer, the visionary behind what we just saw, which was the Harmonic Convergence 2020. I'm here with Mark Sims. Thanks, Mark, for being there. Let me unmute you. And I've done another interview, and Mark's been all around. And this is not just an idea. This comes from a deep experience of meeting other beings. So, Mark, you told your story a little bit, but why do you think this time of coming together as a Harmonic Convergence is so important for the planet now?
Well, we've reached a point in our collective evolution, and the planet itself has gotten to a point in its growth and evolution that we've hit a tipping point in terms of our ability to live in harmony with our planet. There's so many human beings on this planet now impacting the balance of nature that we need to wake up to the fact that we are having detrimental effects on our environment, on the species that are crucial to maintaining balance and harmony. And we need to just simply wake up. And this is a point in our history in which we must make this transition from being adolescents to responsible adults as a world family, as a human community. And you can imagine that other worlds, if you believe that other advanced civilizations exist around the universe, that they've also had to address this point of their own growth and collective evolution. And it's a moment, a critical moment in each planet's history in which whether, do they survive or do they have to restart or reboot or reset because they haven't quite figured out a way to act responsibly as a civilization. And we're at that moment. We are clearly an existential threat to ourselves. And if we don't shape up and step up to the responsibility before us and really acknowledge what our true purpose is, we face this potential threat. And if you look into the prophecies of the indigenous around the world, the Hopi, for instance, say that we are at this time of prophecy where we can either go up, we can meet the challenge and listen to the ancient wisdom of our elders from these cultures that are there to teach us if we're willing to listen, and help right the ship? Or are we going to go off the cliff because we've refused to step up to our responsibility?
Right. And I think this is such a turning point in human history. The virus has shown us that we are one planet. What I do, what you do affects everybody else. And so we could not be at a better moment to show that we need to be unified in consciousness. And there's also this extraterrestrial component to this. I call it a celebration. So do you want to talk about how you met this? Wasn't quite an extraterrestrial, but it was a sort of ascended being, and how the extraterrestrial component is so important for this harmonic convergence we're in.
Yeah, back in 2012, I attended a 6-day retreat that was organized by a man named Dr. Stephen Greer. Back then, he was not quite as well known as he is today because he just came out with a movie called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And I went to this retreat to learn a meditative practice that he had developed with the help of extraterrestrials, he claimed, for the purpose of initiating contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. And I was skeptical, but I read his 3 books. I ended up registering for his November 2012 class, which took place in Borrego Springs, California. And to my great surprise, a ship appeared above our group on the 5th evening. And a few hours later, in the privacy of my hotel room, I met an extraterrestrial, what I thought was an extraterrestrial, in my hotel room after doing my own private CE5 protocol. The CE5 stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and the protocol was Dr. Greer's own unique meditation that he had been teaching us for 5 days that I had become very adept at, and I used it in my hotel room to summon an extraterrestrial. And that led to 13 days together with this being who called himself Tejbar. And that 13 days was primarily spent discussing the history of our world and the nature of consciousness and how consciousness evolves. And so we're human consciousness, let's label it that. And he explained that in order to become human, a conscious human being, we must first go through the animal kingdom, beginning with the most simple life forms. What by simple, I mean like arthropods, things with a tiny brain. And that's where animal consciousness begins, and these simple insects or small insects. And over many, many, many thousands of lifetimes, we evolve through 4 major stages before we reach the 5th stage of consciousness, the human stage. And just briefly, I'll share with you and your viewers what those 5 stages are.
Yes.
The first stage, then you go through a transition to stage 2, and that's amphibians, reptiles, and fish. Stage 3 is birds and waterfowl. Stage 4 is mammals and marsupials. And the final stage is, or the next stage, is human. Well, Tejbar explained to me that he had once been human some 3,000 years ago. And when he died, he ascended to the astral realm. And I asked him, what is this place, the astral realm? It sounded sort of like heaven. And this was at a time when I was an atheist. I'd been an atheist my entire life, So I was learning from this being that our consciousness survives the physical death, and it continues its journey either through reincarnation as another human being to continue our spiritual development and growth. But at some point, we have our last human incarnation for the purpose of ascension, which is stage 6 of this multi-stage
Yeah.
process of conscious evolution of the individual consciousness. And he went on to share with me not just stage 6, because he claimed to be a stage 12 conscious being. And he took me through all the stages from stage 6 to stage 12, and then went on to explain what stage 13 was, which is a new stage that he's entering.
Do you mind sharing that? Because yes, if we go from, the lower life forms to animals to humans, this is obviously another stage. Each stage is a platform for learning and evolving the soul. So as we graduate from the human, we become, let's say, cosmic citizens. And then what are the higher levels? I'm curious, because we're all wanting to get there at some point. So what did he tell you? Oh, I lost you. You lost your sound for a second. That's okay. I can read lips. No, not yet.
There was an
There.
airplane. There was an airplane that just flew by, and it was very loud, and I muted myself.
Okay. So yeah, the
So
next level. Yeah, let's go deeper into Tejbar's teachings.
okay. Well, I think it might be apropos to share with you a diagram that I developed with his instruction or tutelage. So if you are able to, I can
Yeah.
share my screen if I can do that.
Yes. You should be able to share your screen if you go to the.
Okay, let me do that, and it will make it more clear to your viewers of how this process works. Okay,
I love
so
this. This is a beautiful outline. Yes. Okay. So what do we have here? Tell us.
so what you're looking at is a chart called the Universal Consciousness Development Chart that Tejbar took me through and had me developed. And he told me that I was the first human on Earth to be given this knowledge, and that he encouraged me to share it with the world. And so I'm writing a book, 13 Days with Tejbar, in which I share the story of meeting him. And one of my goals is ultimately to write a second sequel book that will go into great depth on this chart. But I'm going to quickly go over for your viewers what's going on here. So I'm going to go full screen, and
Okay.
hopefully everyone can see this easily. Are you seeing it fully?
Yeah, I'm seeing the full screen. It looks great. I love it.
Okay. So what you're looking at are the 15 dimensions of consciousness that Tejbar described to me. And the 15 stages are represented here along with the 15 dimensions of consciousness. It's really interesting and important that I share and distinguish between the stages of conscious evolution and the 15 stages, or dimensions of consciousness. They're both represented in this chart. In the yellow area are the 15 dimensions of consciousness, and they're divided into 3 levels, what he called realms of consciousness. And at the bottom, you have the physical realm, and this is the realm in which we exist. And above that, you have the astral realm. And this is the realm that he entered after ascending from the physical as a human to an astral being in the astral realm. And then he went on to explain that he had a second ascension after completing the 10th stage of his conscious evolution. And that allowed him to ascend to the celestial stage, in which he was when I met him. He described himself as a celestial being. And that I'll explain here in a little bit, or maybe I should explain it briefly.
Yes.
So tell you what, let me come back to that. I think it will be easier for everyone to understand if I first go through the stages. So I've described the first 5 stages of conscious evolution according to this chart. So the first 4 stages down here at the bottom, you have the fly, which is just a symbol of an arthropod that we might have started life as an individual soul or astral being. And the little r with the circle represents reincarnation. So you stay in this first major stage of conscious evolution through thousands of lifetimes as an arthropod. And eventually you advance to stage 2, and this is the stage of amphibians, reptiles, and fish. Eventually, after thousands of lifetimes, you advance to birds and waterfowl, then mammals, and finally humans. Now, these 5 stages in this chart also describe the 5 dimensions of consciousness, and they correlate directly to the 5 physical senses. So, so this is an important point that I need to make.
They also correlate directly to how expanded our awareness is. So each level is a greater knowledge, let's say.
That's right. So you can imagine that the frog is much more conscious than the fly, and that the swan is much more conscious than the frog. The wolf is much more conscious than any of the previous beings, and human beings are much more conscious than any of the animals in the animal kingdom. Some might challenge that idea, and I would agree. But with anyone who would challenge that to some point, but the point is,
I know what you're saying.
You
and
know
the
what
next level, and the astral beings that you met, Tejbar is more conscious than the human beings, and then
that's right.
Level, okay.
So these next 5 dimensions or stages of conscious evolution, Tejbar explained with me. Stage 6, I've labeled in this chart as transition and adjustment. This has to do with growing into the new astral body that's released from the physical body at the point of ascension. So he described that we are made of 2 things, that we are 2 things in union, the physical body and the astral body being the developing soul of the individual. And that gets released eventually, ascends to the new level or realm, and continue its journey. And there are now 5 additional stages of evolution there. We have stage 7, universal exploration and research. And so let me take a moment to go back to stage 6. What he explained to me is that we are reborn, or maybe that's not the right term. It's more like we graduate, where a birth has taken place, and our astral body has now come out, and we are growing into this fully capable body, kind of like a dragonfly. If you understand the stages of a dragonfly, first it has a larval stage called a nymph. And the nymph eventually reaches a point where it goes through a drastic metamorphosis, where it comes out of the water, it sheds its exoskeleton skin, and then the wings take time all day to expand, to dry, and eventually it can go off and fly. Well, stage 6 is very much like that process of the dragonfly coming out of the water into the air for the first time, a whole new environment. It is ascending from the water, the world in which it knew, to a new world, the atmosphere.
This is what's happening on Earth to a lot of humans. We are
That's right.
Ascending out of the old dramas of human, relations, all that stuff that sucks us into density, and we're becoming more of the higher astral, because we've owned those lower levels. Just like what you went through, all these lower levels, we've had to own the experience of those consciousness in order to move on. So we're at that point now, I think, is what you're saying.
That's right. So that's what all stage 6 is about. And then stage 7 is about, now you have your wings, go fly around the universe and learn. Go experience other cultures. Go meet other astral beings and interact with them. That's what stage 7 is all about. It's universal exploration and research. There's a huge cosmos out there to explore, and spend as much time as you want in stage 7 before you consciously make a decision to enter stage 8. And stage 8 is where we begin the process of merging as a social memory complex. This is what's referred to in the raw material, the Law of One, that was created by Carla Ruckart and the people she was working with back in the 70s and 80s. So people may be aware of that. People who aren't aware of that, I highly recommend that you learn about the Law of One. There's the raw material, it's called, and raw is this social memory complex that's in effect a whole planet that is channeled by this woman, Carla Ruckart, and she shares the information she channels with someone who's transcribing all the knowledge, and they would do this through the 70s, and they published the books called The Raw Material and The Law of One. And this is the stage 8 in which you have a group of souls or astral beings that you're beginning to work with, and you make a agreement with those that you're working with to basically merge into one hive mind. Think of it as a hive mind. So as soon as you make that agreement with your other members of your soul family, you now are so connected after you merge together as one mind. You know everything the other members of your group know and experience, everything from not just their current astral life, but all the previous physical lives. Part of stage 7, this transition and adjustment, has to do with the shock that the soul or astral body goes through in its quick remembering of all of its past lifetimes in the human form and animal form. All these past lifetimes suddenly come back, and you remember, and it can be very confusing. So that stage is all about integrating and growing into that experience and understanding that what you're moving into, this level of consciousness you're moving into.
That was 7. So as we go to 8, 9, 10, they keep expanding.
Right. So 8 is when you merge with a social memory complex into the beginning of a social memory complex. It's a small group. And then stage 9 is more of that. Stage 10 is where you begin working with entire teams to take a barren planet that is orbiting a star and begin terraforming it to prepare it for life. So that's what stage 10 is about. Stage 8 and 9, as you begin working with the members of your soul family that's growing from stage 8 to stage 9, it's all about creating new life, using consciousness as a resource. This is where, for instance, stage 8, it says life creation of simple life forms. You might create a new insect on a new world as a group of individuals that have joined, and you create something that's never been created before, and you begin to become master geneticists. It's a process that involves working together in consciousness, and Tejbar explained how that worked. He gave me examples of it, where you can literally just drop into a special state of consciousness with your group, your soul family or your soul group, and you begin collaborating on a new animal that has never existed in the universe that you want to create. And then from that process, once you all agree on the new entity that you want to create, the new physical being that you want to create, that is then synthesized into a genome, a genetic uh, um, uh, seed. We'll call it a seed. And then that can be implanted into an animal that can act as a surrogate and give birth to that. But you have to find an animal that can be compatible for that particular, for instance, insect. So you come up with some version of a fly. It looks a lot like a fly, but it's not exactly any kind of species of fly that's ever existed in the universe. The surrogate would be an existing like horsefly, and you would plant that seed or that genome into that fly, the female, so that it could then lay the eggs and
Right,
give
that's
life.
very exciting. No, it's very exciting because I think creativity on this level is a practice or doing it on those other levels. And also what you're saying, I think that's happened to Earth. All the
Yeah,
genetic varieties of plants and animals here have been the creation of these ascended gods or beings that
that's
have
right.
used that to nothing more I think nothing more satisfying than adding to creation. And so keep going because I think this is really exciting stuff. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
and you're the first interview I've done in which I've
Mm.
gone into this level of detail. And to me,
I
it's
really
so
appreciate
exciting.
it. I was really waiting for this, Mark, because it's like, okay, I've heard the story, that's great, but what about it? And now here it is. So thank you. So keep going so we can
So,
go to
so
those
I've
levels.
described all these stages of, of growth, of evolution, major stages of the conscious evolution of the individual being. So as we progress through these stages, we are growing into more of, or we're connecting more with unity consciousness at greater and greater levels. But we also still have a sense of identity, that of the I am. So Mark Sims, for instance, isn't lost through this process, but a connection with more ascended beings, astral beings, is happening as we grow through these stages. And as part of that growth, we are contributing to the purpose, to we'll call it the purpose of the creator. We are
And
working,
the joy of creation. I mean, I think there's
we're participating in the creation itself with creator. And stage 9 is really that stage in which this memory, we'll call it the soul group of how many ever individual astral beings are involved at that stage 8. And I've been told by Tejbar it could be as few as 6 or as many as 8 or 9. It's typically in that number of beings that come together in stage 8. Stage 9 is when you bring in creator directly to aid in the creation of more complex life forms like human beings or humanoid advanced creatures that are ultimately going to become advanced beings. So creator takes a direct role in stage 9. And what's so wonderful about this, anybody who knows the Baha'i faith, the number one symbol representing the Baha'i is the 9-pointed star, which is shown here.
yeah.
And that's the symbol of God, of creator.
Mm.
So stage 10 again is where now we move on. We're done creating individual life forms. Now we're going to take a whole planet that is barren and we're going to terraform it. And all this happens in concert, not just with astral beings, but with physical beings and with celestial beings. So now stage 11 is another process of transitioning and adjusting to a new level of consciousness that's much different from any previous stage. So I'd like to use the analogy of the butterfly in the cocoon for the ascension. So just like Tejbar explained, he ascended from the physical as a human being into an astral being in the astral realm. There's you have in the physical body this energetic body, the astral body or soul that survives death. And it's growing inside the physical body like a butterfly growing inside of a cocoon. And eventually the cocoon breaks open and the butterfly is released. The same thing happens between stage 10 and 11. You are an astral being, but you have this celestial being growing inside of you, this energetic body, and it is released to participate and experience the celestial realm. So there's this major stage that Tejbar explained to me of transition and adjustment that takes place. And once that's completed, stage 12 is the stage of apprenticeship. And what he explained to me is that you become a student of a mentor. And the mentor is a stage 14 being, according to this chart. And that the goal of that is to eventually become a stage 13 being. And when I met Tejbar, he claimed he was a stage 12 celestial being ready to become a stage 13. And what I learned recently is that that process of moving from stage 12 and stage 13 is to commune permanently with a physical being. And that happened for...
That was Tej. That's why Tejbar picked you, because you were the physical being that
That's
he
right.
was mentoring. But why you? Why?
Well, because I'm going to let you in on a secret.
Okay.
Tejbar, it turns out, is my future self. So ultimately, the reason he chose me is because I am him in the future. And he is now returning to me for us together to go to the next stage of conscious evolution. And you've heard the term "as above, so below."
Yeah.
We are literally on this planet moving from we're bringing heaven down to earth. I like that phrase. I like that analogy, that we are simply taking what's happening at the celestial and we're putting into the physical. And that's what's so beautiful about this process we're going through right now. The harmonic convergence is the beginning of a process in which we are bringing heaven to earth. If we are up to it, if we are willing to do the work and grow up and take responsibility for ourselves and our planet, and to do our true purpose, which is to take care of this beautiful home world, our spaceship Earth. It's amazing. We are on a spaceship that was created over millions of years, billions of years, through these processes I've described to you. Astral, celestial, physical beings have been visiting this planet, preparing it for life billions of years ago, through the modus operandi I explained, and through the natural process. The Darwinian evolutionary process works hand in hand with these beings. So it's a concerted effort where nature plays a role. But it's directed and managed as well by these advanced master geneticists that are astral beings, and they're guided through the consciousness of the Godhead, which is the celestial realm, the beings at that level. So I now want to share with you something
I want to ask you, there's individual evolution, but there's also collective evolution. So a lot of people tuning into the harmonic convergence are ready as a soul family to go to the next level. But
that's right.
Keep going with what you were saying, because I think this is really fascinating.
So this is the process by which this is happening. And now I'll just finish up the yellow section of the chart. So a stage 13 being is a being that is in effect someone who comes into their full purpose as a champion of the planet. This is terraforming management. Now, the label here on stage 13 is terraforming management. So this is a ascended being who is really overseeing all the orchestrated the orchestration of terraforming a planet and introducing individual life forms in that planet to maintain harmony and balance so that one species, for instance, doesn't take over the planet and upset the balance. So that level 13 being is really kind of ultimately in charge. And you notice that the symbol here, the sacred geometry symbol that I chose to place here is Metatron's cube. And this is the symbol of, uh, you know, um, uh, Saint Michael or Gabriel. The family of El is, which, if your viewers know anything about the family of El, this is the family that have been the archangels overseeing the evolution of our planet, and they are ascended beings. People call them archangels, people call them gods. They're simply us and our potential for being that one day. And so it's a real mistake for us to worship them as gods. We certainly need to give thanks to them and respect them and honor them because they've dedicated themselves to creating our planet, to overseeing the evolution of our planet. And we should be, respectful of them, but to worship them as gods is a bit of a misnomer. And this is also part of our evolution, that we're moving into a stage of our own personal growth as a human family to truly understand how this process works, and that they are ascended beings, and to be respected as an ascended being, kind of like the way that you would respect the Dalai Lama or some other ascended being. There are many examples. The Buddha, for instance, is a good example of this. Um, Stage 14 is mentorship. I mentioned that. I won't get into that detail because I want to respect time. And 15 is when you go off into galaxy building, and this is really in the realm of building solar systems. And by the way, Tejbar explained to me that when you are evolving through this process, at the human stage, you have a soul group that you're working with. When you're reborn, you have members of your soul family that are growing with you. It's kind of like a class in a school, that you're at the same grade level and you're advancing together through this process. And eventually, the class will become a soul group, and they are a soul group. So when you're reincarnated, for instance, as a human being, instead of the last person who was your wife being your wife again, or spouse, the next time they might be your father or your brother or your sister or your mother. So you're switching off roles between each other to learn together. And by the astral stage, when you go to stage 6, you begin to realize all these past lifetimes and the relationships that you had with an individual astral being or soul through these different lifetimes and all these different relationships you had. And that continues through these additional stages of conscious evolution. And what you form is what's called a soul family, a soul group. And it's stage 8 where you really make that covenant together to form a hive mind or a social memory complex, a small one. What happens eventually with that group is that you can choose to enter stage 15, galaxy building, as a group to create a new solar system. And so what happens, what that stage from 14 to 15 is about, is basically taking your consciousness and imbuing a lifeless rock that's orbiting around a sun with your consciousness. So what I'm told by Tejbar is that our solar system, with the 9 planets we know, or the 8, depending on how you count, that Gaia, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all members of a soul group that went through this process. And when our solar system was made at the moment of a supernova, of the atomic star that makes up that originally our solar system is made up of. So our star is a second generation star. It's supernovaed. And through that explosion, all the matter that was spewed out from the supernova created the planets. And it took billions of years for all that matter to come back and aggregate into the planets. And
Right.
then
And the raw material of the human body, all the precious minerals that go into making life
that's
happen
right.
from the.
That's right. So, so a soul group will then come to a solar system that has formed to some point, and merge their consciousness with the planets, and that's how planets get their genders and their names are from these beings. So that's how Gaia got her name, because that name was the name of the consciousness of a 15th level being that gave herself to, or went from stage 14 to stage 15 to become Gaia. And
that's also why planets have a consciousness and an influence astrologically, because they are emanating the thought form matrix of those beings that have created them.
And we are directly linked to her, that we are the outgrowth of her. That's what's so beautiful about this story, is that the animals that rise from, from the muck, the first cellular life forms that formed billions of years ago, came out of the primordial goop that was Gaia. And that of course there was other factors too, the electrical energy that came from the sky, which from indigenous cultures is often referred to as the creator or the father, and the mother is Gaia. She provides the physical matter by which we come from, the form. But the energy, the conscious spark of life comes from the father. And together they create life that ends up being the first cellular life forms that over time, through the Darwinian process and through the managed process of these conscious beings, higher level beings, ascended beings, manage the growth of and development and evolution of life on a planet like Earth. So that's how this works.
But of course, beyond the galaxy and solar system buildings, there's universe buildings. And
yes, it goes on. But there is we'll call it I'm lacking the word, but
a threshold, you mean?
There's a threshold, right, in which 15 for this universe, stage 15 is pretty much where you stop. But you're right, there is universal creation. There are many universes, and that gets into a whole other business. And I don't know that much about it, frankly, because I didn't ask Teshbar about that. I've been focused on this story, on how to teach this and what really is involved in all this. So now
this part is fascinating, but go ahead, because yeah. Now we come to what?
So there are 15 dimensions of consciousness. I've mentioned that 5 of those dimensions that are the dimensions of the physical realm correlate directly to the 5 senses. That is sight, smell, taste, hearing, and feeling. The next stage, the 5 dimensions of consciousness, include the sixth sense. We call it the sixth sense. It's that intuition of, when you're walking around and you feel like somebody is looking at you, and you turn around and sure enough, somebody's looking at you. That's part of the sixth sense. It's the intuition of consciousness. We sometimes call it ESP, for extrasensory perception. And it is this that is stage 6. And we actually have access some of us to ESP abilities, some more than others. And that's just because they're further along and they've worked on developing. It's kind of like a bodybuilder who gets in the gym and works out will develop the muscles. Well, that's the same for ESP or extrasensory perception. If you go and read esoteric material that's available, you have to search for it and you have to, I would suggest, meditate and ask Creator for it to guide you. You will be led to the places where this sacred knowledge can be provided to you and a teacher can be given who can help you through that process. That's the way. It's very, these levels or dimensions of consciousness are very powerful, and they are granted only to those who are ready for it, who can use these powers for the proper reasons or the proper purpose.
Well, I was going to ask you that because there are tests along the way. Each level has a test that will challenge whether you're owning it and whether you can transcend it. So, I mean, this is a part of our evolution, and this is where we're at now. Will we come together as a unified soul family or split apart?
Well, I can tell you, I am very optimistic. According to my sources, we're well on our way to making it. If we can continue to focus, and one of the reasons I'm here and coming out of the closet, so to speak, and putting myself on stage and sharing this information is because it's critically important. Any of your viewers watching this right now are actually being affected by this knowledge in a very positive way, especially those that are ready and are receiving it, because this, I'm giving people a roadmap and a way to continue their journey to embody your true purpose, your true mission, which is to, help the planet grow. So they have the ability to share this knowledge with friends, to begin doing the things that awaken these other dimensions of consciousness that turn you into superheroes. You can become a superhero by working on these things.
Yeah.
So
no, I love the map, but what advice would you give to start to move through the territory? I mean, we have the map, but how do people listening, what do they need to do internally in themselves to keep moving?
Meditate. If I could give your viewers one suggestion, go into meditation, spend at least 20 minutes in the morning. I do it also at night when I'm not too exhausted. I've been working hard lately, and sometimes I'm not doing my nightly meditations, but every morning before I even get out of bed, I'm awake and I'm aware I'm awake, and I'll just sit there and I'll close my eyes and begin singing a note I call the hue. And this is a practice I learned from Eckankar. So back in 2013, a year after my communion experience with Tejbar came back to me and he said, join Eckankar. And so I did. I didn't know anything about Eckankar. And it's their main spiritual practice involves singing a note called the hue. It's the song of God.
Right.
And
human, as in human,
yeah,
man.
human, right. And I became an Ekist for 2 years, and then I left because I was instructed that I had learned what I needed to learn there, and I left to continue my work. But I continue to practice the hue every day, singing it for 20 minutes, and then I fall into silent contemplation, and I just wait for things to come to me. I get downloads sometimes. I'm given ideas or thoughts that I then act on after careful contemplation and consideration. And this is a way that I'm guided by Spirit or by Creator or by Tejbar, who is my conduit to Creator. And that, like I said earlier in your program, Tejbar is my future higher self that's coming back to me at this critical moment in our history.
Well, you've developed a sequence of events that people starting July 5th to the 14th, which is sort of taking us in a way through some of this map you've laid out here, right? Do you want to talk about that sequence, late July 4th to the 5th and onward?
Yeah. So beginning on the morning of July 5th, I will be leading this meditation that I just described. But we're going to do 22 minutes starting at 11:11. So starting at 11 every day for 10 days, starting on the 5th, I will be giving an 11-minute, we'll call it a sermon. But in reality, I'm going to be introducing everyone to the theme of the day. The first day, it's about inner peace, exploring ourselves, and about inner peace. How do we attain inner peace? And then we're going to go into a meditation for 11 minutes, 22 minutes at 11:11. And when we come out, we'll then go into silent contemplation and for 6 minutes. And then I will wrap it up with a summary of the theme of the day. And then we kick off our regular programming at noon. And I will then, for the next hour, be either talking about on the 5th, I'll be talking about the harmonic convergence, giving everyone a background about my story and how I was propositioned by Tejbar. And as it turns out, others, I was given a formal request to do this, not just by Tejbar, but other beings that came together. And it's a fascinating story that I will tell publicly for the first time.
Right. Great.
And so that will kick off the programming. And so if people go to thc2020.org, there they can see the 10-day program, what each day themes will be. And we have amazing speakers. We have indigenous elders that will be coming in and sharing the knowledge that they've had and their people have had for centuries about the star people, the star family, and their origins, their origin stories in their cultures. And then we'll also have contactees, amazing people like Whitley Strieber will be on the program.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most
Actually, I'm going to be speaking on the 12th with JJ Hurtak. Do you have Daryl Anka there? Bashar, did you contact him?
No. Daryl was busy. He's got a number of his own things going on, but Craig Campabasso, or I should say Craig Campabasso, he comes from the old country, and he's an amazing contactee and dear friend of mine who has given an amazing interview that will be airing for the first time during this 10-day period, and other amazing contactees.
I just want to say the 10-day period is sort of a progressive initiation into awakening the greater mind. So we are all on this journey. If you tune into the harmonicconvergence2020.com, you'll be on this journey of planetary awakening until that final talk about where the 12th will be contact, but what happens, the conclusion, because that's very dramatic.
So all this builds up to July 14th, and that is Contact Day. Universal Harmony is the theme. And what we will be doing is an experiment in consciousness in which all those participating around the world at the prescribed time, and there's going to be a very special time in which we do this that I've been given. And I'm not going to tell you when that time is yet, because I know it now, but I'm not ready to share this with the viewers. This is something that they will have to follow and then appreciate and understand why we're doing it at the time we're doing it. It's a very perfect moment in which we begin this meditation to reach out and initiate contact with our star families.
This is July 14th. What time will that start on July 14th?
Well, I'm not going to tell you yet.
How do we find out? How do we find out?
Yeah, I'll share that information on coming up to the 14th. But I just want to tell everyone, please watch our program. I will, for the first time, share that information on the 11th during the Saturday Night Live with the Global Peace Tribe on their program. That's when I'm going to share that information for the first time with the world. And I'll
be streaming some of that. I just want to say I'm streaming some of that on this YouTube channel, New Reality. So you can look at all the latest updates. I'm very excited to be a part of this. So, okay, on the 11th, you're revealing that moment.
Yeah, when the time will be, and why it's that time. And it's a really amazing situation. I can't wait to share it with everyone, because people will understand. But what it correlates to is something happening in the sky astrologically that is just epic. And this thing that happens in the sky will happen at a specific time. And it is that moment that we begin the contact sequence as a global community.
So
and
do you want everyone at that moment, when we get that official moment for the 14th, to look up at the sky and start to...
Yes, if they want to see the star family show themselves to the world, yes, you'll need to be outside. And so that's going to be key. Now, one of the things that maybe your viewers are asking is, wait a minute, you know, if there's this one moment in which we're going to be doing this and it's nighttime, let's say in California, it's daytime on the other side of the world, how are they going to see it?
Right.
Well, I've got an answer for that. And I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger. People have to watch.
All right, because I think if they're going to show up, it doesn't matter if it's day or night, but I'll be willing to wait till that moment. I will be out there with a group of people whenever that time is. You can contact me. Maybe we'll go up to some of the Hudson Valley famous sighting areas. That's where Whitley had his dramatic experience in 1985. So thank you, Mark. This is an incredible vision you've put together. And I knew it had to have this sort of background, because you just don't come up and think of something on your own and say, okay, I'm going to do this. You know,
right.
It needs this framework and this development. So thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and going, because I get where you're going, and I feel like I'm part of that consciousness. So I'm just happy to be here to share.
And it's such an honor being on your program, Alan, and to be the one introducing this information. It's taking me years to be comfortable with stepping forward and coming out of the closet, so to speak. I've been on quite a personal journey, embracing the role that I've been given, and now I fully embraced it. I am proud of myself for the journey I've been on and how I've stepped up to do this important role, to lead us into the harmonic convergence like Jose did back in 1987. And I want to acknowledge him, because he was such an incredible man. Him and his wife, Lloydine, were such leaders and had such charisma and dedicated themselves to that. And I can really appreciate for the first time what they had to go through at a time when there were no cell phones or social media. And yet there were millions of people around the world who participated in that. It was really a miracle.
I was there. I met Jose Arguelles in 1986, and he was preparing that whole year for the Convergence on August 16th and 17th, 1987. And that was, I would say, the beginning of a planetary awakening.
It was, truly.
And that led to the 2012. It was 25 years that went from 87 to 2012, which marked the beginning of another level of awakening. And now we're coming into this new phase. So you're part of a great tradition. So yeah.
I'm very honored and humbled by it. I truly am. So, all right.
So I just want to thank you for bringing out this information with the maps of consciousness, because that's why I call this program New Realities, because each of those 15 phases is another stage of reality. It's another level of our cosmic mind that's coming into form. And I can't think of a better time to present something like this. So, and to be a part of this, because this is what I've been working for. So, Mark, thanks for all that you've committed to doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mark Sims, the architect, I would say, and the executive producer of the upcoming Harmonic Convergence 2020.com. Look at it, July 5th to the 14th. It is, you are part of it if you're watching this. So go out there, look at the website, be a part of those lectures, and join us as we awaken as a planetary civilization. So I guess that's it.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
I'll talk to you soon. I
right.
appreciate you here. Okay.
All right,
I'm
my
just
friend. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, you can leave. I'm just going to end by playing that clip again. So,
Okay.
And this is Alan Steinfeld with Mark Sims, and this is a little ending clip of the Harmonic Convergence that's coming up. And thanks for tuning in.
From July 5th to 14th, a historic experiment is taking place around the world. A global meditation to invite peaceful extraterrestrials to show themselves with thousands of light ships across the sky. During this window in time, a planetary alignment will create an opportunity for us to unite and envision a bright future for our planet. This 10-day event will bring humanity together in this time of unprecedented change to rise up and unify. Indigenous cultures and prophecies have told us of star beings standing with us, ready to help and support our transition to a better future. The Harmonic Convergence 2020 will bring together elders, leaders, artists, and experts to guide us through a transformational journey. The last day will culminate in a global meditation to make contact with our universal family. The impact of this collective experience could usher in a new era of unity, love, and reverence for all life. It is time for us to step up and take action to shape the future of this planet. We are human, and we are not alone.